Hello and welcome to Odds on Europa League quarterfinal second leg. We have two open ties and two almost done, I would say, with Freiburg and Aston Villa with 1 foot and a half in the semi-finals, but still to discover the other two teams. And we have Alain Valnegri Leo Bachanian to give you all the information for these games to be played on Thursday. So let me know in the comments which teams do you think are going to qualify for the semi-finals. I want to know. And now let's go on with the show. Celta Vigo Freiburg is the first game in Germany. We saw only one team. It was all about Freiburg. They just ran over Celta before the game. Actually, Celta's manager 𝐜𝐿𝐧𝐧𝐸 said that the season was already good, that the team had no pressure because they are going to stay one season more in La Liga. So I think the players took that sentence really seriously, and they didn't show up in Freiburg 3-0 in Germany, but also in La Liga against the bottom team, Oviedo at home, 0-3. So it's going to be almost impossible against this Freiburg, Alain, that away from home in Europa League, 2 defeats, but usually they control the games. We saw low-scoring games away from home in this Europa League, and I cannot see anything that makes me optimistic about Celta coming back in this second leg.
Yeah, it's difficult. The question is, it was an accident in Freiburg. I don't think, because in the last 8, only two victory. Maybe the squad needs more deepness, because the squad is a little short to be competitive in Liga, where Celta is fighting with Betis for the last spot for the Champions League, and in the last weekend they lose a good opportunity to take this spot, losing against Oviedo. Yes, Oviedo is in a good moment in Liga, but Oviedo is in the last spot, and yes, I don't know. Probably is the last call for Celta, because in Liga, in my opinion, Betis have the quality, the skills to catch the spot. The schedule is not so good for Celta, because their meet team from the top, meet team against fighting against relegation. Yes, is all in against Freiburg. Freiburg is not the best season of Freiburg. We saw that, but Freiburg in the last 2 weeks, they improve a lot. Against Celta. It was one of the best version of Freiburg. Yeah. A big offensive powder and a risk, an aggressivity, and Celta was surprised with that, and the direct football that play. Since the beginning of the season, Freiburg away suffer, in spite of their improve. What I said, I wait Celta really offensive for this game, and I choose a risky odds over 1.75 goals in the first half, because Celta need to attack and Freiburg with space is dangerous. Odds 3.65.
Here the bookies put the odds at 10 for Celta to qualify. For Freiburg is only 1.06. Leo?
Yes, Edu, there's no value in Freiburg to qualify, because I think it's done this for the Germans. I did not expect, to be honest, that difference in the first leg. I was convinced that Celta will bring the tie alive to Balaidos. A great chance for Freiburg for the first continental final in their history, because the potential semi-final is going to be either Betis or Braga. We could have another German team winning the Europa League, as was the case with Eintracht Frankfurt under Oliver Glasner. Although that Eintracht, I think, had more quality than this Freiburg. but I don't downplay what they're doing at all. If 𝐬𝐭𝐴 is the legend for Celta, well, Vincenzo Grifo cuts the same figure for Freiburg. It was his great goal that opened the scoreline in the first leg. They dominated the match from the very first minute. It was probably, and I agree with Alain, one of the best performances of Freiburg this season. 2-0 up after half an hour. Manzambi could have scored the third one in the first half. He hit the post. He's a defensive midfielder, and he was making a run into the box. Suzuki making diagonals all night. Beste was a threat on the night. Matthias Ginter probably was in dreamland because he's a player born in the city of Freiburg. I think there was not even a serious chance for Celta until the 85th minute with Fer Lopez. He had a very good chance, but couldn't find the target. And I don't think it was a case of Celta being, I don't know, too conservative, let's say, last week. I think they were overpowered by a team that was much better on the night. I don't think that usually the gap will be 3 goals between these two teams, but it is what it is. Freiburg in Europe, they are in form, 7 wins out of 11 games. As you mentioned, just 2 defeats. Celta, anyway, is having a defensive lapsus at the worst time of the season. While competing for the 5th spot in La Liga and also at this stage in Europe, they have conceded 12 goals in the last 4 matches. And against Oviedo, a relegation team who haven't won a single game since September away from home, they conceded 3 times out of 5 chances. I like anyway Giralde's attitude, saying like, if you don't believe, don't come on Thursday. I think if he was saying, as you said, Edu, that there was no pressure for his Celta players in the first leg, what you say now after a 3-0 for this second leg? I think it's going to be a night to celebrate in Balaidos, this European campaign. But this could open up the game even much more. And as you mentioned, it's true that Freiburg away from home, usually the games in this Europa League tend to be low-scoring affairs. I don't think so that's going to happen on Thursday night. That's why I'm taking the goals market route, but the goals over 2.5 for me in this Celta Freiburg, odds of 1.93.
The stadium is going to be packed, as you said. Giraldo said, if you don't believe, don't come, and it's going to be full. There is no standing in one side of Balaidos since the stadium is refurbishing, but still it's going to be a great atmosphere because it's the cherry on top of the cake in these last 2 seasons with Giraldez on the bench, no matter if they go out of this Europa League. X2 for 𝐿 Freiburg. 𝐿𝐭𝐴 is telling us both teams to score, which seems to me very likely for this game. The winner plays against Betis or Braga, by the way. And the other one, this is early kickoff. Be careful. This is early kickoff. And then later on, we have Aston Villa, Bologna. Also, this one is done. I would say 3-1 for Aston Villa in the Dallara. We saw Watkins scoring a brace and some good days for Aston Villa. They were suffering a little bit in the previous weeks, but in the Premier League, they only drew with Forest, but it's enough to keep the distance and keeping the Champions League spot. Really important for the club to play Champions League football next season, and very close to European semi-finals at home. They've been great in this Europa League. They've been perfect in this Europa League. 5 home games, 5 home wins, including the one against Bologna back in September. So, Leo, for Bologna, if you want to be optimistic, I guess you have to think also that they've been great away from home in this Europa League. 5 wins away from Bologna, including the one at the Olímpico to come to the quarterfinals.
Yes, it's true. That can give them some space, some scope to dream. But to be honest, I could think more of Celta giving us a shocker than Bologna, even if Celta needs to overcome 3 goals deficit and Bologna 2 goals deficit. I mean, it was a killer, I think, for the tie, that third goal from Watkins after Jonathan Rowe made it 2-1. Emery was saying before the game that how big this test was for Villa because the man-man pressing of Bologna, because of how much they go into duels, which are aspects that this season for Aston Villa have been difficult at times to deal with. But I think Emery's plan was clever, and in the beginning trying to disrupt this Bologna's man-to-man marking, making sure his players were moving into different areas, rotating, dragging their marker into uncomfortable positions, but not always work anyway, because on that first half, Aston Villa had not more than 37% possession. Bologna came close to opening the scoreline with Santi Castro. They have a disallowed goal as well. Jonathan Rowe was taking mad cash every single time, and I think he was the best player on the pitch on that first half, Jonathan Rowe, and already playing for Marseille. I remember in a friendly, I think he was as well terrorizing Aston Villa, and he did the same in that first half. But it was the moment which was the most important, which was 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲 scoring 2 minutes before halftime. On those 45 minutes, it wasn't as maybe easy as we could see if we look at the scoreline 3-1 of Villa away from home. Rodgers and 𝗀𝗲𝗄 were not linking together, but the second half was different. I think that is also the quality of why Aston Villa is the favorite to win the competition. They don't need to play well to score. They have done it already a few times this Europa League against Lille, Basel, Red Bull, to give you some example of not playing very well but still scoring. And I think for Bologna, yes, still a matter of regret that first goal. The weekend in the 1-1 with Aston Villa, it was another example of them being with the Forest. I'm sorry, it was another example of them being more efficient than great this season, because they went up 1-0 without a shot on target, because it was an own goal that opened the scoreline at the City ground. They are 7 points ahead of Chelsea, sitting 6th, so they're in a very good position to get Champions League football, regardless of the Europa League. For Bologna, a home win finally in Serie A against Lecce. But even, Edu, as you mentioned, even if they have produced one of the great wins of this competition at the Olimpico against Roma, I do not think they will shock Villa Park. There is a know-how as well for Villa here, third European quarterfinal in as many seasons for them. My take here is X1 Aston Villa to win 1.67.
Good odds indeed to trust Unai Emery's team. As we said in the comments, Villa to qualify pays absolutely nothing. Bologna to qualify pays 21. Alain Valnegri, how do you see this one also? Going for a second win for Aston Villa in this time?
The logic said that, but in the last 7 games away, Bologna win every game, and that feel more comfortable. In the first leg, we see I think that the moment of the game changed the perception right now of the game, because Bologna was good and don't deserve to lose with that result. And in the case of Bologna, should score the first goal, the history of the game and this quarter of final change totally. And in my opinion, we are more balanced than the 3-1 we saw in Dallara. It's something frequently with Italiano's team. The defense made 1-2 mistakes. In Serie A, you don't pay that. In Europe, you paid cash. You paid cash, and the mistakes in the goal of Aston Villa are not a team to deserve to stay in the semi-final in Europa League, especially against a team managed by Unai Emery, because they're concrete. How much Bologna shoot on the target last week? 19. And how much in the target? So poor. The percent is so poor. In spite of that, in my opinion, Bologna go in Villa Park to take a revenge, to try to score a goal in Villa Park, because in the last 2 games they don't score. I checked the shoot on the target for this game odds, and I saw Bernardeschi 2 shoot on the target or more with amazing odds, and we can try. We can try because Bologna will be attack, and Bernardeschi right now is the leader. Odds 4.20.
All right, we see some comments going for Aston Villa to win this game. Gundala, I don't see Aston Villa not winning. Aston Villa home win. Thomas, Aston Villa, and over 2.5 goals for 𝐿𝐭𝐴𝐲. These two ties are almost decided. Freiburg, Aston Villa. The other two are very open because they both finish 1-1 in the scoreboard. First one, Nottingham Forest, Porto, 1-1 was a good result for Nottingham Forest. We expected much more goals, especially after seeing these goals at the beginning of the game, but that was it. They survive Porto, and they have to finish the tie in Nottingham. They've improved under Vítor Pereira, both in the Premier League and also in Europe. A warning, Alain, this team lost the last two ties, the last two home games in the Europa League against 𝗂𝗃𝗄𝐻 and Midtjylland, and Porto 2 away wins only in this Europa League. But for instance, they beat Stuttgart away, not easy. So perhaps it's still open this tie.
It's still open. It's still open because Porto have the personality to go to play and try to adapt his model of play in England. That show us since the beginning of the season a lot of talent. Porto have a lot of talent in the middle. With the Fofana signing in January, I think that had some physically player really important with experience in international competition, and right now Porto will win the Liga North. Important victory against Estoril the last weekend, and in the first leg we saw Porto was better. Porto was more creative. Porto have more control of the game, but Porto was not accurate in the area of Nottingham Forest. In my opinion, Forest have the focus in Premier League. Nottingham Forest can go to the Championship because the investment was massive, and but it's true, Forest have a special relationship with European competition. They don't do a lot of European competition, but they do always a brilliant season in Europe. And for that, for this game I don't choose 1x2. I see both team can score, and I choose both team to score. Odds 2.00.
You mentioned that Porto was better in the first half. Alain, XG, expected goals, 2.16 for Porto, only 0.45 for Nottingham Forest. Leo, how do you see this one?
I think it's a tie that could go all the way, to be honest. Extra time, even penalties. Forest last home win was in January, 4-0 against 𝗂𝗃𝗄𝗃 in this Europa League campaign. In the Premier League, the last time they won at home was in December, and 5 of their last 6 home matches ended in a draw at the City Ground. So I do think that Porto here has a chance, and we could again get ready for a long night at the City Ground. I think the most important thing for Vítor Pereira at the Estadio Dragao was that they brought a 1-1, having only used just 2 players of the usual starting lineup, Morgan Gibbs-White and 𝗀𝗏𝗄𝐻. It was a complete rotation by Vítor Pereira, and still paid off. I think it was not anyway probably a first leg that is going to be in our memory for a long time. It wasn't a great game, although Porto was the better team on the night. But I think it was the first time this season that the second tier lineup by Forest produced a result. It was important for them to have Chris Wood back in attack. First start for him since October. He missed 23 Premier League games through injury this season, and he could be a great addition. I said last show for this end of season, trying to survive in the Premier League and trying to get into European final. It could be the first semi-final Europe for Nottingham Forest in 1984. Stefan Ortega in goal made few crucial saves in Porto, and he's, I think, a good understudy to 𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿. Sakabot, he's only 19, this central defender, and he showed again that he could be trusted. There was chances for Makati, Bagua, and Doye. Anyway, I think now on Thursday, we're gonna see probably the best, or more likely, or more close to the best 11 that we can see with the Nottingham Forest. Even though on Sunday they play another crucial game, this time against Burnley in the Premier League. But as I said, I'm convinced this is a game that could go all the way to extra time and penalties. I mentioned the home record for Nottingham Forest, which haven't won since January at home in all competitions, and they haven't won under Vitor Pereira at the City Ground. So my take here is a draw in the 90 minutes, a draw at 3.3.
Okay, let's check out also the qualify market. Nottingham Forest to qualify is 1.63, and Porto to qualify is 2.2. So there is some value there. We can check it in Oddspedia to qualify. There you go. Thomas Sissoko, Porto to win. Another one that says Porto qualify. And 𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿 saying Porto to win and both teams to score. 𝐿𝐭𝐚𝐲 away win. So no one is backing Nottingham Forest here, despite the good draw at 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗀𝗀. And the other one, very open in Seville, in La Cartuja, who have Real Betis Braga here. The home team was also better in the first leg. Braga could have scored more goals. They scored in the first leg, but then Betis were able to draw in this penalty that the players fought to kick. At the end was 𝐋𝐞𝐿, the one who scored the goal, and now Betis are big favorites. Of course, you can see the odds 1.9. I cannot imagine the atmosphere in La Cartuja, more than 60,000 people to back Betis, in not in great form, Betis, but I guess they try to do the same as they did with Panathinaikos, that I was decided at home with 4-0. Looks like a missed chance, Leo, for Braga, that first leg, the result, because also we saw against Ferencváros, and I remember you pointed it out that they struggle when they travel. They lost in Hungary, and away from home, they haven't been great in this Europa League. Draws with Go Ahead Eagles, Rangers, for instance. Their stronghold is at home, and a draw seems like a positive result for Real Betis.
Yes, it could be a draw, but I think, Edu, that this is a time for or a game for Betis to win and get the semi-final in this Europa League. Their favorites, as I see it. I think we need to take this competition for Betis in isolation from what we are seeing in La Liga, which of course doesn't give you very good vibes. This is a team that is winless in the last 7, that won 1 game in the last 9 matches in all competitions. They're at the back of yet another draw on Saturday in Pamplona. They are still 5th in Champions League spots, but only because those trailing behind Betis are doing even worse than them at the moment. But all in all, the 1-1 in Braga was very positive for them. 𝐿𝐴 looked again, the center forward is capable of doing many things. He fighting between the center backs. He almost scored with a header at the start of the match. He served the great chance to 𝗀𝗲𝗿, and then he took the penalty with great personality. 𝗀𝗲𝗿's anger of not being allowed to take the penalty was really, really silly on the night. But it wasn't just 𝐿𝐴. I think Nathan and Bartra, the center backs, had a good game, because Braga's number 9, Pau Victor, is not easy to deal with. No, he tends to drop, and usually he takes his marker with him, creating spaces in behind, and Nathan and Bartra did well. If there is something as well for me that creates the feeling that Betis could reach a semi-final, is because this Braga could be a joy on the ball, but but they lose focus out of possession. This plan of always building up from the back sometimes can create chaos for themselves, and Betis will press high on Thursday, at least the first 20-25 minutes. In Braga, in the second half, Pellegrini sent Antony to the pitch. He took off Amrabat. That gave more fluidity in attack to Betis because finally Fornals could found a partner to create. Also, Betis on set pieces looked stronger than Braga, with Bartra winning the ball often in Braga's box. I know Antony is not playing at the level of last season when he carried the team to the Conference League final, but his presence always produced an effect. The full backs tend to drop closer to their own box. I think Pellegrini will opt to play Fornals, Antony, and 𝐿𝐭𝐴 from the start, as he's done it against Panathinaikos. In Braga, Hornicek, the goalkeeper, was one of the top performers on the night, especially on the second half. I do think that Betis will create again a lot of chances to score, and I see them going through. And my take is X1, Betis to win 1.9.
Okay, Betis to qualify is only 1.4. Braga to qualify is 2.75. Alain?
Betis last 2 months are bad because 10 games they won only one against Panathinaikos. And what happened in Can Betis? I don't know if it's the pressure maybe or something happened in that vestiary, because the quality is amazing, especially in the middle. I was surprised in the game in Braga. Betis lose the possession of the ball against Braga, and Braga is a direct football clearly. Betis in the second half, I don't remember right now, but the percent of the possession of the ball of Betis was really poor. Probably one of the poorest since the beginning of the season for Betis. Betis is a team feel comfortable with the ball, and when they need to defend, is a team concede a lot. Now we must speak about the pressure, because Betis have a lot of pressure to go to the Champions League and to win this Europa League, because the neighbor is the king of Europa League, and Betis suffer a little that, in my opinion. Since the beginning of the season, they play really well in la Cartuja. Only they catch a draw against Nottingham Forest, if I remember well. And I wait the best version of Betis. Betis must to go out of this crisis, because without that, Betis can lose everything: the spot in Champions League and the Europa League, and it's a good opportunity to win a title. They wait, the fans of Betis wait this continental title. And now, more than Pellegrini, is the vestiary need to give an answer, because the team is built really well. Maybe they don't have a international class striker. There needs something more in the center attack, but in every other position except maybe the left back. But Betis have a really good team, and now is the moment to change. Is the moment to play like against Panathinaikos. Against Braga is not so easy, because Braga is a camaleonte team, because we saw probably one of the most effective with the ball Braga in the season in the first leg, but they don't score, and they deserve and they're great to score more goals. Now the configuration of the game will be different, like Leo said. Betis high pressure, high possession of the ball, and try to score. For that reason, in my opinion, since the beginning of the season, 90% of the game in La Cartuja finished to the over 2.75 goals. For that reason, I choose this market over 2.75 goals, odds 2.16.
All right, Braga away struggling. 𝐿𝐭𝐴𝐲 is telling us going also for Betis and over 1.5 goals, looking for the second European final on a row. Last season they lost the Conference 1 in Poland against Chelsea, and it would be a great success to repeat and go to the final in the Europa League. They are favorites in this game. They will be favorites, I think, in the tie against Freiburg, if they are able to kick Braga out of the competition. Well, great quarterfinals in Europa League. Remember, of course, that you can post your own tips in Oddspedia and participate in our tipster competitions. There is money to be made there, as you can see in the April one. We have an Italian guy on top of the standings, and check out Rivals, where you can create your own tipster competition or join the ones that are created. And there you go. You can check also the prize pool. Let's go with our safe bets as always, Alain.
Celta Freiburg over 1.75 goals, odds 1.30.
Celta need goals. Leo?
I'm going for a very similar one. Celta Freiburg goals over 1.5. In my case, odds of 1.3.
And the ACCA, Alain.
Celta Freiburg double chance 1x with over 1.5 goals. Nottingham Forest, Porto, both team to score. Betis, Braga over 2.75 goals, total 7.09.
And Leo?
My ACCA Celta Freiburg goals over 2.5. Aston Villa to win. Betis to qualify. These three together, odds of 4.64.
Okay, the number that was there was not correct, so the odds are higher, more than 4.6. All right, thank you, Alain, thank you, Leo, thanks everyone for following us, for watching us. See you soon. Bye bye.